get real, let's get vulnerable, let's tell each other horrible things. You can only be so much to other people. You can only be so much for other people. You can only do so much for other people. But you gotta be true to yourself. Take a chance and take the quiz.
It's right below bed.
Right to your door.
It's right below bed.
Download anymore.
It's right below bed.
Cause you got so much love.
It's right
to
below
give.
bed.
Trademark.
Oh man, I blew it at the dance contest today. If I just danced a little bit better, maybe I could have taken home that prize. I deserve that prize. Well, at least there's the birds in the sky to remind me that life can be okay, you know? I wish I could fly. I wish I could have flied on the dance floor today. Maybe I would have won the thing instead of all those cheaters. They don't even know how to dance. Should have been me with the grand prize. Oh wow. This is crazy. Oh my god. Oh no. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Cool.
I'm in my PT cruiser with my girlfriends and we're wearing bikinis. In our PT cruiser we're going to the beach. And our bikinis are string bikinis with a triangle top.
Yes. Hello, class. It is me, Cameron Esposito. This is Ruby. She is sleeping. Now, very few comics will let you see them with their dog sleeping on their body in a baby Bjorn. But I'm not one of those comics. So it's great to see you all. Let's see, we've got 89 folks currently watching, and I bet that'll get up into the 90s. 200 people started with us. So for those of you that are still on, that means, first of all, it is like hard to do multiple hours of a joke writing class from home. You have been amazing. And for all of those people, she really looks like she's dead, but she's just sleeping. She's she's, she's asleep. She has had a weird couple of days. She got stung in the face by a bee. It swelled up enormously. Anyway, this is the kind of stuff that you set up for this class for. So can we start? Oh, and I do see that Carly has asked, not relevant, but burning, what type of dog is Ruby? Ruby is a Chihuahua Shih Tzu mix, and she usually looks less like a dying head. Anyway, I have brought her with me to class today. And you are wonderful. Thank you for signing up, and thank you for sticking with class for multiple weeks. It's so hard to prioritize anything right now, and it's amazing that you did. I also want to answer some questions that came in from last week. So I'm going to start with that, and then I have a topic for today. If there are any other questions that we can get to, I will also try to do that. But I do have a topic for today, so I want to start with these questions, some of which came in last week, and let's see. There were a couple I really wanted to. Oh, a definition of crowd work. Somebody just asked for a definition of crowd work. Crowd work is unscripted interactions with the audience. So you might ask the audience a question and hear their response, and then make a funny witticism back and forth with them. Also, do you feel like you need to process something that was intense fully before making a joke about it? I think this is such a good question, because somebody else previously in our class had asked the question, essentially, what if it's too late? What if you quit smoking a year ago and now you're talking about quitting smoking? And will that still be relatable? Then this person is asking essentially, when is it too soon? And really the answer is, it's like per your comfort. When you stop being enthralled or interested in an idea, then you should potentially consider working that joke out of your material. Or if you think a particular audience has seen it before, because you are a touring comic who plays theaters and people pay money to see you. The other option is, or the other side of that is, when is it too soon to joke about something? It's never too soon to joke about large cultural moments. We can always find an angle. I think generally, when people say too soon, it's because like the joke was insensitive in some way. And sometimes we even need that. Like sometimes we need a joke that cuts through the bullshit of having to be saying the right thing, and just speaks to like some of our deepest fears. And sometimes it will be ill-timed. And that's part of what humor does, is it's a pressure release. So that's that. For you personally, your emotional reaction to an event that hurt you. I've talked about things, like I wrote an hour about sexual assault 10 years after I had been assaulted, and I tried to do material about a divorce, like sort of as that was ongoing. So I've done both things, where a really traumatic thing, I've tried to address through stand up years later or in the moment. And I think both can work, but it really is not about pushing yourself to do further harm. Is it ever a good idea to use sarcasm in naming the emotional reaction? I think sarcasm can totally work. The thing about sarcasm is it has to be the opposite of what you mean in order for it to land. Like it can't just be, I mean, it can be a little snarky too, but that's what I would just say. For newer comics, sarcasm can be very difficult, because if it's really subtle, it can just take a long time for you to get the skill set to stick with that. So let's say, just say you're trying to be sarcastic, it's not really working. It probably means you need more practice, or that you're the president and you're lying and saying that you're being sarcastic when really you're just being yourself. Do you feel like my stand-up persona is different than I am with myself and my friends? Yes. You know, one thing that is true for all of us for with our stand-up personas is that it's a heightened version of you. So in order for it to really work with an audience, I think it helps if the things that you're talking about speak to some larger truth about what you feel. Um, like for instance, if when Stephen Colbert, for instance, used to have a character on the Colbert Report, that was that character was still very clear in all of his um, viewpoints, which is sort of how you can create a character that's sarcastic. Like that whole character. I mean, it's parody, but that's also sort of sarcasm. But yeah, for me, my stage persona is, super confident about everything and has a bombastic set of views. And like, as a person, I'm kind of sensitive and I'm pretty shy, actually. So yeah, it is I am different off stage. Da-na-na-na-na. And someone I see up here has asked, was there a discussion about what makes something funny? And what I will say is, what makes something funny is uh, just that it is honest for me. That is what, when we laugh, what we're doing is we're recognizing something that feels true to us. If watch any SNL sketch, watch any stand up, they're all doing the same thing, which is sort of telling the truth about our culture. Do I ever record myself at home is a question I also got. I don't I didn't previously do that before the pandemic. During the pandemic, I've been, recording the sets I do from home. But you all are starting stand up, or you're working on stand up in a different world than I started. Without a live audience in front of you, I think recording and playing back your voice sounds like one of the best things that you could do for yourselves right now, because you're not going to necessarily get the like on stage reaction. I do think that you can improve just by hearing how you sound. I do think that that's possible. I used to also have a stand-up podcast that I would listen to hear myself do stand-up. Do you only test if something is funny in front of an audience? I just feel like things I say out loud don't seem funny to me, which is kind of discouraging after a while. Well, yeah, I tend to test what's funny in front of an audience. I think it's the best way to find out how you need to improve. It's usually easy to figure out. It's usually the easiest way to figure out what works and what doesn't. But maybe right now it would be that recording and playing things back to yourself. Okay. Now, I do see someone saying, paranoid, I'm going to copy someone's joke unintentionally. You will. Like, there's only so many topics under the sun. You absolutely will repeat somebody. The point of creating stand up is to create a whole body of work where all of your jokes make sense cohesively together. And that's something we're going to talk about today. And so, when you find out down the line, oh, this person has a similar bit to me, that you can think, well, this is part of my whole overarching persona. It's not like just some random throwaway. And you can cut that joke if you want to. But there will be repetition. And I don't tend to think that the repetition usually comes from joke theft, but from parallel thought. Okay. I see that there are more questions. I want to get to our lesson for today quickly and then go back to the questions in a moment. Okay. Today, what I want to talk about is set structure. So, you've been writing jokes. Jokes are comprised of those, setups and punchlines and tags and act outs. But you put together all of these individual jokes, you're going to have a set. A set is the jokes that you do within the allotted time that you've been given from the booker or that you've given yourself. It's a set time. That's what it's called. So, usually at an open mic, you'd be starting with a 3 to 5 minute set time. And then eventually, you'd be doing hour-long sets. But how to structure a set. So, y'all have been doing joke writing using emotional reactions. And you've been also linking topics. But one thing that I will draw your focus back to is a couple weeks ago when we did that 5-word bio. Um, and just to kind of get us started, can y'all put some different 5-word bios for yourselves up in the chat? Can you put some 5-word bios up for who you are today? And in the meantime, I'll look at Annie Manning's question, which is, how do you deal with jokes landing in front of some audiences and not others? Is it usually an all jokes vary in reaction? I would say it's a bit of both. All jokes, vary in reaction. Also, like your delivery that particular day. Also, like what happened in the world outside of the show that particular moment. The cohesion of the audience. All that stuff matters. But I would also say that, you know, there are jokes that are bulletproof that like always do well. And what you're trying to do as a comic is work up to the point where more of your jokes are bulletproof. So it might not mean that the joke needs and by the way, there are some jokes you probably are just going to eventually at the end of the day cut because they just never work. But if your individual jokes are landing differently in front of different audiences, it might just mean that you are at a place in your career or in your practice as a comic where more is ahead for you and you're honing your skill set. Because eventually there should sort of be predictable laughs in predictable places and things should be replicable. Okay. Liberal artist in conservative family from Jenna Richards. Jennifer, quasi-adult, socially inept millennial woman. Chill presenting, petty for sport. That's fucking hilarious. Likes cats more than people. Just getting into romance novels. I love this. This is really great. So when you're structuring a set, some of what you're doing here, like, so when we've been talking about which topics to choose, some of what we're doing here, that's the overall impression that you might give your audience about you. You want them leaving thinking completely incapable of learning guitar. Like, that's actually really funny. Helen, I love it. Silly asthmatic with glitter addiction. Like, it's great to give folks an essence of who you are. But to start a set, when you're structuring a set, often you want to put an introductory joke. You want to put, like, first of all, just as a general rule, school of thought rule, your funniest joke is going to go at the end. That's your best joke. That's your closer. That goes at the end. Your second best joke, that probably goes at the beginning. Because when you come out in front of an audience, the number one thing that you want to do is captivate their attention right away. So you want to put this this second most funny joke right up top. And often it's also a joke that introduces you to the audience. So for instance, when I was, at a different place in my career, now oftentimes when I'm walking out, the audience is there and they know that they're there to see me and they know I'm a queer person. But there was a different time in my life where I had like longer hair and I was a part of a large, like there's 8 comics on the bill. I'm part of this, group of comics and I'm going to walk out and and which jokes are the funniest? The jokes that honestly, what I mean by that is your jokes that get the biggest reaction. Like usually if you have a super funny joke and that goes at the end, you will get an applause break. An applause break is when the audience is laughing so hard that it turns into applause. And if you do that at the end, then what's amazing is you can say thank you and good night, and that applause can bleed right into the applause that you're getting at the end of the show, which makes it way less awkward to end the set. But you might not be getting applause breaks, if you're at an open mic level. You might. So, anyway, this second funniest joke, I would also encourage it being an introductory joke, and that's why I was talking about, people see me. I had longer hair. Folks weren't necessarily placing me as queer, but there was something about me where I thought that might wonder. And so, first of all, I wanted to set myself up so I could talk about my relationship later. And second of all, I wanted people to know I was queer. That's important to me. And third of all, I also didn't want them to be distracted by it. This is where you get into that thing of if you've seen stand up, you might have heard the joke format that's like, I know what you're thinking. Like it's like a comic walks out, hi, I know what you're thinking. What do I look like now? Ellen with longer hair. I don't know, whatever it is. I don't know. There's got to be something funnier that I can do up top. But how I used to start my sets was for years was I had long hair on one side, and I would start my set with, as you can tell by my haircut, I am a Thundercat and also a giant lesbian. So like there's something funny about the Thundercat thing. Oh, haha, the 80s or whatever. And the introduction of the queerness led people to kind of relax. Okay, they didn't have to wonder if I knew that that's what was going on with me, which is Bowie with a puppy is totally right. Which is why I said that. It's also why, and I don't necessarily recommend that. I don't necessarily recommend this, but this is also why sometimes comics who are fat will acknowledge their weight right up top because they want you to know that they're in on you being able to visually see them. This is also why comics, I worked with a comic who, there used to be a comic who took my class in Chicago who had one leg, and that person would talk about that. Josh Blue, who was a former winner of Last Comic Standing and also like a, super talented, nice guy. He has cerebral palsy. When he walks out on stage, the first thing that he talks about is having cerebral palsy because it affects his speech and mobility. So he wants you to know that he knows that that's what's going on. So if there is anything about you that, and this is not to pigeonhole you, but if there's anything about you that you think the audience might wonder about, it is my personal opinion that I think it is helpful to start the set by acknowledging that or to introduce yourself to the audience in some way. So for each of you, I think I'd like you to think about what is the first thing that you would like an audience to know about you so that you can then tell jokes. So is there anything? I mean, for instance, most recently, the hour that I was working on, I was publicly married. I was married and it was part of my job. So when I was then separated and then divorced, I felt like I had to start my set by saying, I'm a gay divorcee. We haven't, which is wild. We haven't even had that long enough to realize that it rhymes. That is like a dumb joke that I would start sets with. And I would do that because then I was going to talk about divorce for the rest of the set. And I wanted to make sure that the audience members, if they knew me, because of my prior life or in a part of my prior life, but hadn't like been following the news about me, I set it up top so that people could catch up and then we could be on the same page. So I'm wondering, in a set that you might want to do, thinking about these 5-word bios, is there anything that you think you personally would want to acknowledge first? And Stephen has said every set does sort of need an introduction. Yeah. I also did an hour that was about getting married. And I started that set by saying something about, I'm engaged to be married. It was the first thing that I talked about because it set the tone for what I was going to talk about for the rest of the hour. So, yeah. What is the thing that you think you would want audiences to know about you first? I don't know if it's Shane or Shaney. But I have really short hair from having cancer. I'm also queer. Feels like there's something there. So I will say, really short hair from having cancer and then also queer, like that right there is a perfect place to start. You're looking at my hair, you're thinking, what is she, a cancer survivor or is she queer? Both. That's your opening joke. Can we go up a little bit, Sammy? Yeah. Paul or I constantly get mistaken for 10 years older than I actually am. Absolutely. Yeah. Hey, nice to meet you. I can be here. I know I look like your parent, but I'm actually in my 30s or whatever age you are. Ambiguous ethnicity, that's a great place to start. A lot of people wonder, a lot of people ask me to my face, what ethnicity? What are you? And to those people I say, you're terrible and we're not friends. Something like that. Brooks. I've started sets with, I know what you're thinking. Is that Jonah Hill? I'm Jewy, mask, and fat. That's very funny. And let's just keep going down them. Start with Brandy. In case you're wondering, yes, I'm a spinster despite having this mom bod. That is funny. Let's see. Carla says, I think I'd have to mention my queerness. It's obvious, but not to straights. So that is sort of what I'm talking about. For me, at a different time in my life, it was really important to mention it because then, and I mean, you could also do it as like, this reveal about, who you're dating, but that doesn't necessarily, for me, who I'm dating that's not my identity. So it was important to claim my identity. I'm shorter than 98% of full grown humans. That is also, first of all, you are all doing a very good job of describing some things about yourself. Just trying to see what else. Yeah, click on that. I'm bald, short, and have a handlebar mustache. Monopoly, but Monopoly was not my favorite game growing up. So anyway, that is so fucking funny. Yes. Who else has their opening line? Actually, this is so funny because this is why I am so impressed with this class. You all are amazing, and I'm gonna tell you why. Because what I did was just started asking, what topic could you start with? And you're already at the place where many of you started writing opening jokes. But if you were just starting with that opening concept, could you then give me a joke about this thing that you think the audience should know about you? And can we go to A-Lane for a second? I'm pretty sure my voice can tip folks off or at least make them curious that I'm trans, but I also look like a 14-year-old with a beard. It's a Halloween mystery waiting to be explored, probably. Yeah, I mean, again, I would think that if you are going to introduce at all into your, I mean, this is opinion. So you could disagree with me, but I think if you are going to introduce in your set that you're trans, I think it's helpful to do that up top because it gets people out of their heads about, wait, is this going to come up? And it lets you then control their minds. This is a mind control exercise. Marletta. I talk fast, but I'm just excited. Oh, let's go with Rachel for a second. Being from a small city is weird. I dated every member of a percussion ensemble. I mean, there were only 2 musicians, but I still dated them all. That is so funny. So I think, so again, when you walk out, it would maybe be something like, "Hey, I'm Rachel. Um, surprised to be here, surprised to be anywhere. I'm from a small town. We don't necessarily have places where I'm from. I mean, I'm being from a small city is weird. I dated every member of a percussion example, of a percussion ensemble. For example, that's one thing about a small town. I mean, there were only 2 musicians, but still, I dated them all. Go to Jenna for a second. I'm a dietitian, but not that kind of dietitian, as you can probably see. I think that's very funny. I will also say that could be, depending on how you deliver it, a little self-deprecating. And personally, I think that people with marginalized identities um, don't have to be self-deprecating. So I wanted to say there's also a way of saying that same joke and claiming, your body type and claiming um, your strength and your power. But I just wanted to say because I bet this class has a higher than average, number of queer and trans and non-binary and a zillion other marginalized identities because it's a class I'm teaching that um when we are so often fucked with outside of our space, I just want to say you don't have to take yourself down. There is a way to, again, acknowledge, oh, my haircut looks like a Thundercat and a giant lesbian, and say that in a way that holds on to your power and says, I know this is what I look like, and I'm like stoked about it. And Jenna's joke could also be delivered that way. And I would just encourage any of you, and this is also for anybody of any identity. I don't know that self-deprecation, I think it's actually kind of false, to be honest. It doesn't mean you can't be humble or operate with humility. But I think especially for marginalized identities, it can just put us in a box that we are already put in elsewhere. Okay. Let's go with Carly for a second. Little about me, I'm extremely respectful. Just today, I turned my high beams off for an oncoming traffic light. First of all, that's fucking hilarious. I do think that you need something maybe before that to introduce yourself. And the things that I'm talking about are what do you look like? Where are you from? What do you sound like? What are people going to perceive about you? So also things, for me, I'm from Chicago, but I live in Los Angeles. Matthew's got it here. And Carly, this is a very funny joke. Matthew's got it right here. It's this, hey, Matthew Faye, great to meet you. No, not related to Tina. If it was, maybe I'd get some of that money. Something stupid like that. PS Wall, let's go with that for a second. Hey, I'm PS. Nice to meet you. Before you ask, no, I'm not a lost and petrified child. I'm a fully grown adult who is here on purpose, but also petrified. Oh, yes, let's go with Danielle. Hey, Danielle. Little about me. I grew up very Catholic, very Southern, and very Latino, which means I was very much a virgin for a very long time. Awesome. Let's just see. Let's go with Meredith for a second. I always thought I was going to grow up to be either Miss Honey or marry her. Turns out I'm more like the Trunchbull, body type, grumpiness, and all. That's amazing. And right above that, Mariah. I have very large curly hair, and no, you can't touch it. Yes, I do have very large curly hair. No, you can't touch it. Yes, it is full of magical powers. Let's go with Haley for a second. Hi, I'm Haley. It's great to be here tonight. And yes, I do have the dead eyes of a stripper. And yes, my dad did abandon me and my entire family, but he's back now. So, hey, Dad. Thanks for coming to the show. Something like that at the end. Ivy Lee. Hi, I'm Ivy. Great to be here. You're probably wondering why I'm not white. That's very funny. Oh, let's go right above that with Sarah. First of all, if your name is Sarah Sanders, I just have to say it. Unfortunately, I do think you have to discuss that right up top. I'm Sarah Sanders, not that Sanders. That person has a Huckabee in the middle. And I'm loud. So I'm often read as confident, but what's really happening is my deep rooted anxieties are just yelling to get out. That's extremely relatable, Sarah. Very relatable. Let's go for a second to Ashley. I'm really realizing that I have no idea how people see me. I feel invisible or maybe a bit scary. I'm at a loss here. I'm sure this is true for other classmates. Um, I It is hard. I don't always know how people see me. Sometimes people tell I'll give you an example. I was touring with Glennon Doyle and Abby Wambach and a bunch of other fabulous people. Musician Milk was on this tour. Great poet Amina Brown. And I was standing with Abby right before going on stage. And I said, we're going to do amazing out there. I can't believe that we both have dyed blonde hair at this moment and are the same size. And we were in a green room. So as I said this, Abby directed my eyeballs to a mirror where I realized that I am actually not the same size as the greatest soccer player that has ever played in the history of soccer, who is in fact 6 inches taller than me, and I think weighs maybe 50 more pounds of muscle. So what I'm saying is we don't always know how people see us. We don't. But what we're going to try to do is some approximation of how we want people to see us. Not every comic is getting on stage in the clothes that they wore all day in their house. So this is great that you identified that you don't know the answer, and I think ruminating on all right, what do I want to talk about? What do I want to focus on for my bio? All right. And I like Rachel's joke there. I said it can be read two ways: sandals, lesbian, or counselor from Christian camp. I'm too old. I'm no longer a counselor. I'm actually a little too old for that. Something like that at the end. Oh, let's go with Agnes for a second. Hi, I'm Agnes. You might be imagining, wow, that is one hell of a before photo. But prepare to clutch your pearls. This is after. Yeah, you might be wondering how I got here. I'll tell you my secret. I'm from Wisconsin. That's very funny. Also, then, what I would hope you would do, again, because larger bodies are also something that marginalized in the world, is then talking about how, anything that you might feel positively about this journey, I think could be so strong. That's such a strong set. Okay, let's go down a little bit further. Oh, I mean to the end, the other way. No, I'm not a drag queen. I just like glitter. And Marietta's got a funny one there. My mom is a librarian. My dad is a mime. So now I'm very loud. Let's go with Aileen for a second. People tell you when you start tea that your voice will drop. They don't tell you that you'll lose all concept of tone and volume regulation. My partner would tell you I yelled at them about milk yesterday. And then some more information about what that experience was like for you. I would tell you that I think I begged in my highest register. Something like that. if every comic was made to strap on a puppy, I would definitely watch more comedy. I agree. This is beyond, and I'm really proud of it. Let's see what else I wanted to discuss in the lesson. Okay, so you've started this set with this joke, this introductory joke that, okay, what if that isn't my second best joke? Then, if that isn't for some reason this, and how do I know it's the best or second best joke? What gets the biggest reaction? Then I think what you want to do, if it's not this joke that's getting this huge reaction, is put your next biggest joke right there next to it. So we're going to start strong. Where do you put the shit that you're not sure about? Ruby is okay. She's okay. She's just sleeping. I swear she's okay. I know she looks like she's dead. She's just okay. My baby. See? Alive. Just sleeping. All right. So, anyway, in the middle is where you're going to put the stuff you're working on. So, where's my newest shit? Where's my experimental shit? Where's that joke I love that other people never seem to fucking care about? You put that in the middle. Why is that? Because what you're going to end on is the one that your fucking closer, which is the one that always makes people laugh. So again, I would say, if you're using a 5-word bio, you started by talking about what people can see. What do you want to leave them with? When this is the thing about your closer is that it's the final thing that they're going to remember about you. And that idea of leaving somebody with something also gives us the freedom to like really reach for that message. And oftentimes it's like a joke with a message that can like get that big applause. So it's not just that it's like so funny, but it's also if you've proved a really good point. So after, thinking about the 5-word bio, thinking about the way you've introduced you've introduced yourself. What is something that you would want to convince an audience of during your set? So essentially, I'll give you an example. My most recent set's about divorce. I wanted to intro it by saying, I'm a divorced person. I'm going through a divorce. I was separated. I was just always talking about where I was right there. What I wanted to leave them with, the idea that I wanted to leave them with, and I'm not, saying I always achieved it, but it was the goal. What I wanted to leave them with was the idea that I'm okay. Because especially if you're going to talk about something that's like, why is my hair so wild? It's this side. Got it. If you're going to, bring up something that's about personal trauma, you want to leave them with the idea that you're okay. So I'm going to survive this. I will, ride again. I will have because in the middle, I'm going to tell you in that particular set, a lot of what I talked about was like the fucking shit of it, how fucking awful it was. When I talked about sexual assault, I wanted, started by talking about that I was upset that the president had been elected. And then I went through, this personal story. And then what I wanted what I wanted to leave people with was a message about why I was doing this set and what I wanted for them. I literally made buttons that said "get in the way," and that's what I wanted. I wanted people to get in the way of the culture of sexual assault in this country. So, if you think about what do you want people to take away from your set, and it could be something about you. By the way, I just want to say I'm ashamed to be drinking Diet Coke. I'm waiting for the chat to populate. You never know what someone else is going through. Be kind. Okay. Being single is not the worst alternative. Speedway CJ has got it right there. I want to start with the fact that I'm lonely, but end with the fact that I'm comfortable with it. Annie, that you can get through having homophobic parents, and queerness is something that can be exciting and wonderful. I want everyone to repent for the last 4 years in our country. You can be non-binary, vegan, and happy. The best thing you can be is yourself. Being masked doesn't mean macho. None of us really know what we're doing in life. That is fucking true. You can be small and quiet and still have a big impact on the world, or still have an impact on the world. Okay. So, are you going to say these messages as your last thing? You can be Jewish and critique Israel. I mean, that is a very specific thing to want to get from a stand-up set. So, but I think it's very achievable. So I think what I would ask for y'all is not to then turn these things into jokes, but to, as you're structuring your set, to think about, did I achieve what I wanted to achieve? And if not, is there a different goal that I actually should have in mind? Or is there a way that this set can be adjusted to achieve that goal? So there's about 10 minutes left in class. And what I wanted to talk about today was set structure, which we've covered. And I'm curious if y'all have some more questions. I wanted to leave a few minutes for that. Oh, I do see a question coming in. How often do you write? Is it just following the joke format, or should we do specific joke writing exercises? Well, so the stuff that we've discussed in this class is it's a starting point. And for anybody who's currently a working comic, it might be just a new way of thinking about writing jokes. But you can, what I'm trying to get happening for y'all is creating some pathways for how to look at the world through jokes. So if you're always responding as you walk through the world, thinking about your emotional reaction to things, that's how I do stand-up writing. I don't sit down and write. There are comics I know who do that. I don't. I am walking through the world, and if I see something, I think about, what's my emotional reaction to that? I mean, it's not like so it's not a writing exercise anymore because I've been doing this for a long time. But that's what you could do. You're walking down the street, you see, something wild, something unusual. You see something that catches your attention. You have an event in your day that catches your attention. Think in your mind, how do I feel about that? And then write that down. So that's what I do. I send myself emails, texts, I do voice memos, and I write little notes in my joke notebook whenever something happens that I feel I could have an emotional reaction to. Some people sit down and they just sit down and do a writing exercise, like the ones we've done in this class. And you can do that. But for me, it's more so just training myself to always be on the lookout for jokes. Can I touch briefly on how to navigate hecklers? Yeah, I mean, I think that the number, the two things I will say about hecklers is that you're in charge and a good venue should have your back in supporting you in that, but that might not always be true. So if you if you do find yourself having to take down a heckler, one thing I'll say is you always want to stay a little less mean than they are being. That's just what I personally believe. There are some comics who get up and they completely destroy an audience member, and I've done that. But I will say it doesn't usually make you feel good afterwards because it feels to me like I've given my power to this random idiot who was yelling. And so I always try to, keep in mind that I am in a position of power, and I'm probably, more adept at retaining focus than they are. And I don't need to do a ton of harm because you can get into a situation. Sometimes, if you destroy a heckler, the audience will stay on your side. But sometimes, if you destroy a heckler, the audience will actually switch to their side if you're a big jerk. And I think that's especially true if you're a woman or a non binary person. If you're a man, I think it's a little bit different, honestly. That has been my experience. But yeah, men don't actually, you are kind of in a position of de-escalating somebody, and it sucks, and I hate hecklers, but I am also good at dealing with them. How to start out as a comedian in a pandemic. I said this earlier, there are a zillion mics. I know some in Chicago. I know some in LA. There are open mics that are running on, Zoom and stuff like that. So if there is a way to tap into that, who is doing stand up right now? Because people are doing stand up. I'm doing stand up right now. So doing the research and finding out where that's happening. Or, taping yourself, or just putting it up on Instagram, like random 3-minute sets, as you work through them. I've also done that. How do you deal with transitions during your set? One thing that you can do is, again, lead with the response, lead with the emotional reaction. And another thing I feel weird about is, and then you switch topics, or you can say, I was also thinking about the other day this, and just use the also kind of a thing. But one of the best ways in the fucking world to transition between jokes is the classic sip of water. You take a sip of water, you look down for a second, it kind of does a reset for the whole room. Um, mm-mm. How do I prepare myself before a live set in order to feel confident? I cannot overstate the importance of pump up jams. I used to listen to Don't Stop Me Now from by Queen. What if you don't get any laughs the first time I get up on stage? If you don't get any laughs the first time you get up on stage, then you are in really good company because almost no comics do well the first time that they perform. And also, if you're performing on Zoom for the first time or like Instagram Live or something like that for the first time, I'm sure that is going to feel completely harrowing and like you're a piece of shit and like you completely failed. And welcome to stand up, because that is how it starts. That's what it's like at the beginning, but that's also what it's like when you're an accomplished comic who's been working for a long time and you have to retire your old hour of material because you already taped it and turned it into a special, and now you need to have a new hour. There's always an opportunity to eat shit. That will happen to you again and again in your career. And so it really is just about having the confidence to learn from it and try again. How do you incorporate crowd work into the structure of a joke without losing control of the room narrative? So I would say that if it's in the structure of a joke, you the easiest way to do that is just to ask the question that you're going to answer yourself to the audience, and then say, "Me too," or "Oh, it was totally different for me." So, I in your case, because you were talking about being trans earlier, it's like getting up on stage and saying something like, to an audience member, when did you know if you were, cis or trans? When did you know that? And if it's a cis person, they might even say something like, well, I never thought about before. You go, oh, wow, must be nice, or because and then you, whatever, or whatever it is. I don't know what the joke is, because when did you know is also like bullshit, trait thing. But it's just an idea that I'm thinking about how to include a bit of crowd work. Question. I feel like most of my jokes are pretty light, and as soon as they get more sentimental or heartfelt, people stop listening. How do you insert punchlines into a heavier comedy, into a heavier story? So, for a story, you're not going to tell it like a story that you would tell your friends. What you're going to do is you're going to think of what happened. So, like, there's a story for a story. Usually, how we structure stories when we're telling them to our friends. The surprising thing happens at the very end. I'm walking down the hall and I think there's a ghost in my house, and I can't tell what's going on, and it's super loud, and then I like go outside and it's a bear. There actually was a bear in my neighborhood last night. That story, you think about what is the actual event that happened. And I know that that's not a heavier story, but I'm just giving you an example. You think, I saw a bear. So instead of, and then, it was a bear. You use that as your event and you put it through our same joke writing structure. I hope that makes some sense. So again, it's like not leading it as, and the wild thing was that I was sexually assaulted at the end of this whole long thing, but just saying, like, this is, I was sexually assaulted, and what's weird about that, running it through the process. Oh my God, she's grinding her teeth. What? I'm gonna get for like a puppy mouth guard? What are you even doing? Okay. How do you get from open mics to getting booked? Meeting people, knowing who the bookers are, becoming friends with them, impressing people, being consistent, making people laugh. It really is it's a networking thing, and it's a networking thing it's important that people know what your work is. So why do I say that? Because that is why open mics and, making yourself known in the community is important. What if you share something like being non-binary and the audience seems to be truly unsafe afterward? What I'll say is there are non-binary comics who work every type of room, and I'm sure it's unsafe sometimes. I'm sure it sometimes feels unsafe. I know as a queer person, I have been in situations where I didn't feel safe. I've almost been punched in the face. I've been physically picked up. It's like often why I stand behind a table if I'm at a show. It's not because I don't want to meet y'all. It's because it's for safety reasons. So this is not a job where everything you're going to be talking about feels safe all the time, or where you feel safe all the time. It just isn't that job. And also, you can, win over those rooms, and you can do well there. So you can move to Brooklyn and make it super important that you only perform in rooms where you think that this might happen less, or you can work, more mainstream rooms in whatever place or city that you live in, and you can know that sometimes you might feel kind of fucked up, and that has to be worth it. That has to be okay for you. Because if this starts feeling dangerous and that doesn't work for you, then don't do this. Then do something else. And I'm not saying that in a like in a challenging way. I mean, it is a job that, I will be very honest with you all, it's a job that like can be harrowing. And so people should talk about that. You should know that. Should we use trigger warnings at the start as well? I would tend to discourage trigger warnings, because specifically that phrasing, I think, is not gonna usually go over well at a stand-up show. But you could work them in different ways, like just saying, "I'm gonna talk about sexual assault next," and then, jumping into it, or, um, anything else that you think might be, you know, "My mother murdered my father," whatever it is, saying that thing, just saying it, and then the audience it's on them to get up and leave if they need to. I think that's totally fine. Alright, I think we're gonna wrap up in just a second. What is the hardest part about being a stand-up comedian? Um, I think that the hardest part about being a stand-up comic is I mean, it's really not a job for the faint of heart in that, um the work relies solely on you. So you can't really have an off night, because people are paying to be there and they got, a babysitter, or they drove a far play time, or they work a minimum wage job and it was a huge thing where they saved up to come. And I hear those things all the time. And you have a real responsibility to your audience, and you have a real responsibility to be funny, and to be present. And I think sometimes in some fields, you can have off days. And I think, like, if you're a doctor, you can't. And I also think you can't if you're a stand-up comic. Not that I'm like putting myself on par with a doctor in terms of importance. I just mean that is what's hard about it, is that there isn't like a phoning it in option. That's also what's wonderful and challenging about it, because it's such an active job. And best part is that, yeah. Like, I got into this field because I knew it would be challenging. Well, I don't think this was conscious, but I know that I chose this job because it would be challenging. And it is. I find it to be a very challenging job. Um I think I might leave it there. I will say this. So many of you asked so many wonderful questions and did so much work. If you want to try over the next, few weeks to if anything comes to you, I would suggest Twitter. Tweet at me. I hope that I'm happen to be on it, and I hope I see it, and I hope I can answer you, because I'd love to continue talking about this. Y'all have been a great class. Um, Sammy, can you flip back to the comments for just a second? Awesome. I just want to make sure there wasn't anything else outstanding. Y'all were wonderful. Thank you so much. And that's it, I think. Amazing. I can't believe we did it. We did the class. Thank you. What do you think, Ruby? Nothing.